Hello, hello. We will be starting in just a moment. Welcome back. Welcome back. I am now streaming and I'm admitting our guest speaker. So give us just a second as we set up here. A moment. We will get the names right on the screen. I'm taking care of that, Julia. Perfect. Okay. Brilliant. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Thank you for joining us. It's so nice also to speak to a fellow entrepreneur. It's fun. We've got that dynamic in common right now. So for those of you who are listening and back to our sessions, we have started some MoMBA testimonials and case studies today. Julia has been in the Pros and Babes community for a year and a half, first in her journey as a mom and engineer, and now mom, engineer, and entrepreneur. So it's going to be fun to touch upon some of these pieces. And we apply some principles of entrepreneurship to the MoMBA philosophy in terms of becoming the CEO of your life, right? So I think it's been interesting to see how you've taken those visioning principles from your personal life to become the CEO, not only of your, of your home life and your company. And I started introducing you. Could you please continue the introduction of who you are, what your family life is, and about your career arc, what you did, what you're doing now, all the different things that you've done. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then again, thank you very much for having me. I will always be a big advocate for Pros and Babes and the MoMBA program. And it's certainly done so much for me. And I'm excited to be able to share that with the group today. And if there's opportunity for questions, certainly that would be awesome as well. But yeah, so a little bit about me. So my name is Julia. I was born, raised, and schooled in Ottawa, Ontario. An environmental engineer by education, and then became a professional engineer. I started my career working as the manager of the environmental department at a small steel mill just outside of the city. And then from there, kind of when the recession hit was kind of when things didn't go so well for steel. I moved on into the association or the industry association world, where my my focus really shifted from more regulatory implementation and compliance to policy development and regulatory affairs. So really being on the other side of things, but it's been a very interesting journey. And in that time, I became a mom, and I have two beautiful children that are great on most days. They're cute, so they can get away with it. So it works out well. But they're 4 and just almost 2, and they get along very well, which is really lovely. One thing I think to note here is I had my kids a little bit later in life, and that really speaks to kind of what I saw my life as successful, very focused on career and making the money and doing the things, and really waited a long time to kind of have the children. So this is where the MoMBA program really became important for me. It was a major shift in my mindset. But as you alluded to, Kenya, I am now an entrepreneur, and I have designed sort of a life around that sort of work, and very strong direction, very strong sense of belonging, because I'm able to kind of design things around the family and really prioritize what my values are. Didn't know what those were before, and really create something that for this I guess season of my life, or section of my life, is really enjoyable, and I'm really excited to talk a little bit more about that.
To clarify for people who, thank you for that introduction, for people who are entering this world for the first time, I'll clarify a few terms. Pros and Babes refers to professionals with babies, right? That's what it alludes to. And the name MoMBA program was to bring together mom and MBA and allude to our personal and professional life. for most moms who hear both of them, it stands out, but for some people, they don't really understand what is happening there with these words, right? So we'll clarify that. And Julia, I would love from your perspective to explain something I was talking about with a pretty innovative senior leader. We were discussing leadership development needs for moms, for STEM parents, and this leader, they were researching different programs, and they said, you know, what you do is different, it's innovative. And it took us some time to explain actually how we did what we did, why was it different. And ultimately they came back to me and said, this program makes the most sense because we looked at traditional leadership programs in other organizations, and it just doesn't meet parents, mothers, scientists where they are at that intersection of caregiving. And when we're seeing the exodus of scientists, of professionals, we see that it has a lot to do, especially with moms having that increased load at home, that guilt, and making it hard to bring the personal and professional world together. And so we've designed the program from a delivery perspective, from a content perspective, from a process perspective, to really address that. As somebody who has experienced that process for, let's say you're talking to a leader of an engineering department, let's say a man, right, who maybe will be encountering this for the first time. Why is this leadership program different than others? And when I say leadership, it's not only for people who want to ascend and promote, but actually have a deeper sense of purpose and direction and be able to lead themselves through their careers and through families. So can we clarify that for somebody who wouldn't understand this world, this program very well?
Yeah, and I think it's a very valid point, because certainly when I was in my situation, there was a lot of feelings of that overwhelm, that I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Like, my life is completely changed. I knew it, in one way, and it's not that way anymore. And I've got now these other obligations and these other things that are pulling me in, and it's not a feeling of like, oh, I hate this is happening. I love that this is happening, but I now do not know what to do with all of this. And so one thing the program really helped, one great thing about the program is that it's very focused on this exact situation, right? Where all women go through this to some degree. And what the MoMBA does is really help focus the resources and the information transfer and just the sense of community that these parents really need to really understand where they are. And the way it's delivered really offers that opportunity to give the quality information, quality resources in the right bite sizes for the time that they have, right? Because we're busy. We're busy from the moment we wake up. You're getting ready. If you're going to go into your job, you're getting yourself ready. You're getting your kids ready. And in some cases, you get your husband ready, right? Like there's just so many things to do. And that's the first hour and a half of your day. And then you go to work, and then you do your thing at work, right? You rock it out there. And then you come home, and now you got to get the kids ready. You got to get them fed. You got to get them, to bed, depending on how old they are, of course. But, my kids are young. That's my life is, from 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock, all I'm doing is child rearing, right? And so how can I do that in a way that, I feel intentional about, that I'm not worried about the next thing, that's planned. I know I'm going to get to it, but having that confidence and having that plan of how to deal with your day and the time that you've got and the things that you want to do, putting that all into a system, I think is really important. And I think that's what for me, that's what the program did for me. I wanted to do all these things, but I was not organized or intentional enough to be able to do it in an effective way that made me feel like, okay, I can be in this moment. I can enjoy this time with my kids, and then that'll be done. And then I'm going to enjoy the next moment, whatever that happens to be.
Yeah. How has that impacted your sense of productivity, purpose, and overall quality of life?
It has improved it tremendously. I think I've always had a very negative mindset, always finding the things that aren't quite going right. And so the biggest thing that the program has done for me is to be able to kind of get myself away from that and really be able to focus on those moments, see the good in those things, and then knowing that I can move on to the next and feel good about it.
Yeah. Absolutely. So to give more clarity for people who are wondering about the format, we go from big picture. And why is this big long-term picture important? It takes you out of the day-to-day that can feel so tedious and you're just running from one task to another, and asks you, what am I building as a parent and as a professional? I'm building a legacy. One day my kids will leave my home. All the moments will have added up to what they've learned from me. They've observed me as a working mother, and we still live in a society that doesn't typically give working women the toolkit to manage all the emotional states, all the tasks, all the project management in a way that's calm. And so we have these fears that by being a working parent, we're going to instill something quite negative, right? So if you take that big picture look in 25 years, when I look on the legacy of my career, of my mindset, of how I worked with my partner, right, as a team to be able to both have careers, my finances, my health, what work-life balance actually looked like for me, because most of us want work-life balance, but we don't know what that looks like in the day-to-day implementation. So you have to get clear. Your leadership, right? Your legacy and the diversity and inclusion. When you take a step back and you reverse engineer that 25-year vision, it pulls you out of the weeds and says, okay, like we're on a journey, let's structure the journey. So we start off with that vision. We also couple it with values. Values are very important in making sure you're living in alignment with what really matters to you on the day-to-day. And then we essentially break it down into manageable chunks, because when you become a parent, especially a mother, your to-do list, so we need to bring it down and focus. And when you start the program, you choose 4 pillars out of the 12 that we cover. And we encourage everybody to attend all the 12 pillars, but we say choose a maximum of 4 where you want to make progress in the year, and choose the highest impact buckets. Can you speak to the selection of those pillars, Julia, and how it helped focus the efforts versus trying to be perfect at your mindset, your relationship, your finances, your health, your career life integration, versus just, okay, let's do it one step at a time. So tell us about that selection process and the impact.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so critical. I love the range of topics that it covers, because those pillars are absolutely critical for, a successful life, however one defines it. For me to be able to narrow it down to 4, I thought was pretty easy because of where I was in the point that I joined the MoMBA. Mindset for me was the biggest thing. So before I joined the MoMBA, just sort of like another sort of story is, I just had my daughter, but before that, after announcing to my boss and my new employment that I was pregnant, 2 weeks later, I was laid off. And so for me, it was this feeling of being absolutely lost, directionless. I've hit rock bottom. I do not know which way is up. I'm so driven with my career. Now I don't have a job. I didn't know where I was going. So for me, the mindset pillar was ultimately the top choice. I needed to change the way I saw my life and what it needed to, be, to really be able to create something in the future that I could be proud of. Then relationship was another one for me. Understanding where I was and how I related to my husband was really important. We struggle before kids, and then kids come along, and this new layer of where we really needed to become a better team and to relate to each other so that we could support each other in raising our children. The other thing was the career life integration. I had struggled with that after my first was born, and I had gone back to the work world. Again, my drive and my crazy determination, it just wasn't there anymore. It just, the value that I'd put into my work was not the same after having children. So I really needed to explore that pillar and get a better understanding of what that needs to look like for me. And the last one was personal branding. Again, I lost my identity completely, even, from being laid off and being a mom and just not knowing where I stood in the market. The personal branding piece was also very important. So for me, those were easy selections because of where I was in my life. From the other pillars are excellent. I can certainly speak to like the health pillar. I'm very into health, and when I came across the resources that are in the MoMBA program, absolutely top quality. the right information that people need to really be able to take health matters into their own hands. So it's a little bit about how I got there. Yeah.
Thank you. And since you brought up health, I'll expand a bit on that. How do we do it differently? Number one, we have many experts in the program. I facilitate, I design, I curate the content. I speak to where my expertise is. And I'm also a mom, and I'm a journalist by training, right? So that's my expertise. But where I don't have the expertise, or there are better people than me, we bring in people in emotional intelligence and health. And particularly for the health pillar, I learned so much about how our bodies really function differently, our hormones, our circadian rhythms, the type of exercise and nutrition we need to thrive. When we are high-powered women, there's a lot of stress and cortisol. We need to learn to manage that properly. And I will share one thing that I've learned that really surprised me, is that high-intensity exercise can actually raise your cortisol, and it might not be the best thing for us. I've learned that walking and being on the rebounder is what many of us women could need. Again, it's very personalized health advice, but that was completely contrary to everything I had learned about fitness in the past, right? And so lots of things like that about every single aspect of nutrition, hormones, sleep, preparing for menopause, and regulating cortisol was huge eye-openers from the wonderful experts that we've had, and healing after birth as well, and after growing a human, and the impacts on the partner as well. So thank you for bringing that up, Julia. Can you talk about 3 specific tools that you've liked in the program? I mentioned the 25-year vision board that's professionally designed in collaboration with you, the values. We have an impact map. We have very detailed spreadsheets. We have time management tools. I mean, many. I should have had a list next to me to remind myself, but certainly we go step by step. But are there 3 that you really remember that said, okay, these made a huge impact on my well-being and success?
Yeah, I absolutely. So I think you mentioned all of them, but certainly the 25-year visioning exercise was eye-opening. Where I thought I had a good direction, I really was playing it day to day, right? And the decisions I was making were really, to get to the next day, instead of what is this longer road that I'm on? What is this journey that I'm on? Am I making decisions that align with that? Right. And I look back, and even the job change that I made, right? This is like, I was on mat leave, and an opportunity came up and I took it. And why did I take it? When I look at my 25-year vision, I'm not sure that would have been a good decision for me at that point in my life. I just wasn't aware and didn't know. So that has been an exceptional tool for me. And then the values exercise, like, I think to some degree we all feel our values, but to actually kind of walk through them and put words to them and really identify what the core ones were was a really good exercise. It actually took me a lot longer than I thought that it should have, but that's because I really had to reflect on the words and what they meant to me at that point in my life. So I really appreciated that tool, and I'm in the process of revising those as well. So it's one of those things that it's become normal. Like, we're going to evaluate our values to see if we're still on track. Are we still on track? Does this still align with where we want to be? And the final tool this is a huge work in progress for me because I'm very disorganized, but the time blocking, right? And really getting things in the calendar, being intentional, has been tremendous. Where, I used to, plan vacations maybe 2 weeks before the time, right? It's like, okay, let's take a week off in 3 weeks from now. Whereas this summer I had it completely planned by April, right? Like and it was great because it's like, now I just have to walk through the summer and all the great things are planned and all the great things are there laid out for us. Like that was life-changing for me.
Thank you. How is the time blocking that we do in this community different? Do you just do it willy-nilly, or is there actually a specific process and discernment as to how you time block as a working mom?
Oof, I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know that I can explain my process. Like I said, it's still
going back. Then you and I did a session in person to prompt. We printed a calendar. Yes. We looked at your vision and values, and how do we break it down and prioritize?
Yeah. So I think it's, again, thinking about the bigger vision, the bigger things, what is it you want to do? Right. And I remember the one exercise you made me do is like, what do you want to do? I said, you know what? I want to have a craft night with my neighbor, my friend. I want to have a craft night. She's like, okay, well, call her right now and ask her when you want to do this. Really? That's how you do this? Okay, great. Let's do that. Right. And so I called her up. Yep, let's do it every 2 months. Boom. We picked a date, threw it in the
Not
calendar.
a one-time thing. We systematize the thing that brought you joy, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So that's the key. I talked about it yesterday with Brittany. It's not just time blocking the week ahead, is actually looking at the big picture of what matters to you. We put so-called profit producing activities on the calendar. I learned that term from my business mentor, and I applied it to our personal life. And in business, they'll say, your marketing, business development, all of that. But we look at your 12 pillars in life. We write down what is the most important in each. And when you design your calendar, you have to look at first putting the things that matter and then starting to eliminate things that don't fit your vision. There's more complexity to it, of course, but it's a process, right? It's a process. It's not a willy-nilly exercise. Okay, Laibai will make you a co-host because there's a lot of people trickling in, and if you could put in the chat asking people to connect, that would be wonderful. So for those of us joining, we are going to be beginning our MoMBA open house with the topic of personal branding as well. So I will, let's see, for anybody to wrap up our questions, then I'll see if there are any questions from anybody hopping on. Welcome, Alicia. It's good to see you. Megan, Patty. I'll ask Jacqueline if you have any questions about the program too. You can put in the chat, yes or no. And I think Samira is also hopping on. If anybody is hesitating to join the program, what kind of hesitations did you have? Can you tell us about your story of reflecting on it?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, like my fears and hesitation was, this was a whole new world. I'm feeling rock bottom. Is this program really going to help? And then, of course, the fear of, what the program costs at the time where I had, lost my job and all these sorts of things. These were all considerations. And, Kenya, it's, I think you're a big part of this program, like you yourself, but also how you've designed things. Like you really have designed this super system. And so, chatting with you, getting comfortable with, with your vision on this really helped me pull the trigger. And certainly I haven't looked back. I signed up for a second year. It's been tremendous, and it really has transformed the way I do things. And I am a whole lot happier now than I was when I started. So thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us today. If people have any questions, can they find you anywhere?
Yeah, absolutely. I am on LinkedIn. It's probably the best place to connect with me, especially in this space. Yeah, that's probably the easiest. So just the way my name is spelt on the screen, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Lovely.
Thank you.
And thank you, Julia. So we will be kicking off our session. Laiba, could you please post the workbook for everyone? Because this is going to be a good revision for everyone on the call to reflect on values, personal brand, your legacy. It's never a bad idea to revisit those questions and to check if you're still on the right track. I'm trying to find my notes pretty well here. All right. So, and did I make you co-host, Laiba? I see Kenya popping up because I shared this link, and I just a moment. Where are you, Laiba? All right, make co-host. Perfect. And let's look at the chat. All right, so for our workbook today, and my computer keeps on, thank you for being patient with me. My notes keep on skipping to the wrong part. Okay, let's start with a reflection right now for everyone who's here. And if you can jump on camera, I always really appreciate it. So to reach and the question on top, I will repaste it. Close your eyes, and I'd like all of you to answer the following questions. Geez, keyboard. You are doing wild things. To reach my full potential as a mother and professional, I would. And I would like you to reflect on answering the following questions. Have this much free time every week. Accomplish these career goals. Have this much playtime with my kids. Make enough money to be able to afford the following luxuries. 3 things. Okay. So the last question might be difficult, but I would like you to, I have to say, I even have to revisit that question, because whenever I have extra time, I tend to think, what else can I do for my business? Which used to be my free time for myself when I had my son. Pros and Babes was my mental health. It's when I designed curriculum, but now it is my work and I love it. And I have to disentangle my work also for what I do for fun. So how much free time would you like to have every week? What are the career goals you would like to accomplish? How much playtime do you want with your kids? And what are some 3 luxuries? Like, I want you to think 3 luxuries that feel right now unattainable. Dream big. It can be one small, one medium, and one kind of a little bit crazy. Okay, so let's start with that. I don't know who's the Kenya Romanovskas who said no camera, but that's fine. Somebody can tell me who wrote that. You can change your name, by the way, so that I know who the real person is. So please share in the chat as much as possible, or you can speak up on camera. And there's some faces I haven't seen in a really long time. It's good to see you again after the summer. And you know what, Julia, you and I have been doing this work recently together, so I will break the ice. I know silence is good for reflection, but do you want to be the first to answer? Are you ready, or do you need a few more moments?
I'll wing it. How's that? I've got half
Please
ready.
do wing it. All right,
Okay.
all right. Let's go. Let's do it.
Okay. So yeah, this actually is going to sound pretty meek, but in terms of how much free time every week. So like, I'm assuming that's like personal time. I think right now 3 hours a week would be amazing. So that's, you know, kind of a, I don't even know what that would look like, but that would be awesome. The career goals for me as an entrepreneur would be, the first one would be 1 million sales and building a team of 10. That would be awesome. How much playtime with my kids? I'm pretty good with what we kind of have now. But you know, the weekends we really do focus on the kids, and I'd like to maintain that. So it's, you know, a good, you know, 10 hours total over the weekend where we have that time to play, which is a lot of fun. Make enough money. So the luxuries, certainly I think my big ticket item would to buy an Alfa Romeo Giulia. Well, my name's on it, so I think I need to own the car. But then I can't remember the other things. This is where I didn't get to, but certainly something health related, like likely the the hormone assessment or beauty assessment with Larissa would be certainly up there. Yeah, I think even at this point, just being able to hire somebody to build our back deck would be a luxury at this point. It's about a 5-foot drop, so that would certainly be a luxury not to have to do that.
Okay, good. I think there were also wheels for the Nono's Thunderbird, so you could take your kids in your grandpa's sports car.
Yes, the Firebird, yeah.
The Firebird. I thought that was beautiful because it's between generations. You're taking something that belonged to your elders and then being able to share that with your kids. I remember that. All right. Awesome. Patty, would you like to go next?
Sure, I was just trying to get it typed up in here.
Was that you? The 15 hours just for me? Or was that some? Oh no, that's Anastasia. That must be because it's under my name. Endowments, that's Anastasia. That must be.
I'm not sure if KB is one of the other Kenyas or if that might be Kathleen Baker that's typing, because I think she was saying.
Okay, good.
Anyways, I was writing down for free time. I was thinking 4.5 hours per week. I got to that number thinking a half an hour a day during the week and then an hour a day for Saturday and Sunday. For career goals, I'd like to get my P.Eng certification as well as my project management professional certification, both of which I have all the training and experience for. I just have to do the application and submit it. And I've been procrastinating on that. So that's something I need to do some time blocking for so that I can get those applications done and submit it. I'm also hoping to get a raise and a promotion. now that I'm back from mat leave and settled back into work and trying to figure out exactly where we're going with all of that. And then playtime, I was thinking about, maybe 15 hours a week to look at, which is like an hour a day during the week, and then 5 hours a day during the weekend, because then we've also got nap time and meals and all the rest of that. And then for my 3 luxuries, I would like to go on a cruise, ideally with the whole family, and then a separate cruise, just me and my husband without the kids. So I don't know if that counts as 2 or just 1, and then also look at getting our house cleaner to come in every week instead of every other week, or maybe for a longer period of time. Right now, we just have her come clean the bathrooms and the kitchen, and then the hard surface floors, she washes them for us, because, vacuuming carpets in bedrooms and stuff is fairly easy for us to keep up on, but I don't have time to get a mop out and wash under the kitchen table, which in our house is a regular disaster because we have 3 small kids and food winds up everywhere. So
you don't have all that extra time with 4 kids that you're taking care of.
No, I don't have all that extra time with 4 kids, but we're making it work. And so for me, the luxury would be having the cleaner come more regularly. Part of what I'm working on right now is getting rid of all the excess crap that's taking up space in our house. Yes. And so once all that's gone, it'll be easier to keep clean. And then another luxury, I think I would like to plan a holiday with my best friend and just leave my husband at home with the kids for a weekend. So,
yes. You know what? That can be extremely recharging to have that. I've realized, having experimented different types of energy regeneration, a time away with a girlfriend or somebody without kids fills your cup in a way that time with kids does not rest you. You can have fun, you can regenerate, but vacation with kids is definitely not rest. I don't know. Or if somebody's figured out vacation with kids as rest, maybe they're a little bit older, you can let me know. Beautiful. Is there anybody else who would like to share? For those who just entered, I pasted the questions in the chat right now as to what we're discussing, to get you dreaming big. And that that dovetails into the module on career life integration. Most of us know we would like more work-life balance, but we don't define what that looks like, right? And we get lost. That's why I asked you about those luxuries and free time, because as a new mom or as a new working mom, it can take some time before you start extracting time for yourself and your hobbies and who you were before. And you can't operate just from a negative. You need to know where you are going and what you want. And the luxuries is a challenging question for many of us. What I will now move to is values. And before that, I would really ask anybody whose name in the chat is still Kenia Romanovska, please change your name. So it is quite confusing to have 4 and wondering who's writing what. So if you could take a moment to change that, or at least message, no, even live, I can't help you. You really need to do it on your own. There's no way, when there are so many, I can't know. So let's move into the topic of personal brand. And as I mentioned, we've opened up our MoMBA open house. So for those of you listening who are not part of the program, almost everybody on the call is part of the MoMBA program. So it can give you a taste of the personalities and what people are thinking about. And we'll do it through the lens of personal branding. And I think maybe we might dip into relationships. I don't know. I'm feeling a little bit freestyle today. So maybe we'll blend values and relationships. We're on Relationship Month in the MoMBA program. So number 1, to create your personal brand. And for those of you who wonder what that is, it's not just what you wear, it's actually what people say about you when you're not in the room. And you have a personal brand, whether you like it or not. And it's the sum of your actions. It's how your values show up. It's your work ethic. It's whether you bring drama to the workplace. It's how you problem solve. It's how you mend mistakes. It's the value you bring to the table. And so it should come as no surprise that the first thing to build your personal brand in your workbook is to define your core values and vision as a working mom, right? Holly talked about that earlier. Julia did too in her testimonial. Is when you become a new mom or a new working mom, it's possible that you will feel lost in your direction. Holly explained it eloquently. I mean, she has a PhD in chemical engineering that is extremely focused, right? And she had her kids and she felt like, well, I feel disorganized. I don't know where I'm going. And when she did her 25-year vision, she said, well, just having it laid out, she realized that she was actually on the path of what she wanted to create, but she needed to see it all come together, and seeing it also through the lens of her daughter and how she wanted to pass on her legacy as a scientist, and how she wanted her daughter to perceive her. She didn't want her daughter to see her as drowning in her work and feeling unhappy. She wanted to see her as confident and courageous and liking her work and being able to navigate challenges with courage and resilience. She did not feel like that before having that vision. And then discussing her values, especially with her partner. I want to acknowledge that not everybody comes to these sessions having a partner. Many people do. So that's what I will speak to, because it's a second pillar, your relationships, whether it's with your partner. And if you don't have one, you can reach out to me and we can talk about this together one-on-one on how I can support you. But typically, if you were a dual career couple, you need to work as a team. Otherwise, by default, many mothers will take on like the 100 extra tasks that come with parenting. And the path to that is what? Burnout from there. If you're juggling an extra 100 tasks on your RAM, I don't think you're going to be very happy in a year. So having a discussion about values with your partner is a starting point to be able to harmonize. If your values are very different, your pathway will be different than a couple who has values that overlap. And at least if you have common ground, you can problem solve together. And then you have a vision of what you're building together. You can make decisions faster and reduce your mental load, right? So step number one is defining your core values and vision as a working mom. And this is where we can get to our discussion about blending personal brand and relationships, because we are in relationship in the MoMBA program. And then I will get into the next steps of the personal brand. I will invite people to come on camera, the MoMBA program participants, so we can have that discussion. Can you tell us more about discussing your values with your partner and what that looked like for you? I will scan Amanda. I had seen you on the camera for a moment. Amanda Robertson, do you think you can hop on? Or anyone else?
Sorry, I'm just finishing my lunch here. But yes, I can talk to that.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I got you mid-bite. I don't know if that's the case for one of you too.
So I originally did the values game on my own. I found like my husband wasn't super excited to necessarily do some of the work initially, especially like he'd seen some of the things that I had done with Kinney in the past, like back to work planning and stuff like that. So he knew it wasn't completely crazy, but it's like talking about values to an engineer is sort of like, it was just very like left field. So I did the activity myself first. And then I kind of approached it with him originally as more of a casual discussion. And so we kind of talked about like, hey, I noticed that you seem to really value this. And then we kind of would just talk about it more organically. And then as that conversation went, I showed him the list and I was like, well, we had this homework activity and it made a very natural segue into actually doing it officially. And we found, interestingly, that we had a couple values that were aligned and many values actually that weren't aligned. So it was interesting to see. I think like once we get into relationships and stuff like that, there are certain perpetual conflicts that come up. And I think a lot of those do stem from having slightly different values. Sorry, did that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, it did. And
Okay.
as we go, I'll do a bit of a roundtable and ask other people. At the evening session today in the MoMBA program, I'm bringing my husband, and he came to another session earlier this month about his process of designing his 25-year vision, his values, thinking about his legacy. He teaches history and social sciences. So I was kind of able to weave that in, and we went to Istanbul together. So that was a nicer setting to ask these questions, right? They really flowed more naturally. And I said, in 2000 years, what will people say about you? And I know that feels extremely abstract to most people, because I've seen posts recently on social media that said, well, in 2000 years, probably nobody will remember you. And I was like, ouch, is my reflection on legacy futile? But then Pablo, my husband, came up with quite a nice answer. He said, there's some people 2000 years ago who wrote an engraving on a stone, and that still exists today. And when we went to the Ecological Museum, we saw that, right? So he went in front of the Alexander sarcophagus, which is really ancient and beautifully sculpted. And of course, you can look at somebody who had a great vision and conquered things. And I'm not going to get into the politics, like who's the bad guy or good guy. It can mean different things for people. The point is that some people build things that last for thousands of years. And when you think about your values and your legacy and what you will leave behind, like taking a step back, zooming out, and the program will do 25 years. But if you really want to make this deep and fun, go to a really historical location with really ancient stuff and imagine yourself in that moment making a decision that will impact thousands of lives. And many of you today, you are doing that because you are taking care of the environment, you are building buildings or infrastructure that has to last beyond your lifetime. So it's not that futile to ask this question. You might feel like a cog in a machine, but you are responsible for getting energy into people's homes. You are responsible for testing materials to make sure that dangerous things don't happen and accidents don't happen. You're making sure that the environment stays clean for the generation to come. So it is relevant for you to think about legacy. And because you're building a family, you did that with another partner, and it's natural to want to discuss those values. So Megan, I saw you popping on camera. Can you talk about your experience of discussing values with your partner? Did you, didn't you? What was the process for you?
Yeah, so when I started the program, I also did it by myself at first. And then out of our values in the program, we create like a word cloud basically of our values. And I wanted my husband's values to be reflected in there so that I could like print it and put it up, and it would, encompass like our family values ultimately. So I did the exercise. I talked to him about it, and I just was like, just sit down, take 10 minutes, whatever comes to you, write it down. So he actually did it pretty quickly, which was nice. And then we had, for the most part, I would say most of our values were pretty aligned. We did in our top 5 for each of us, I think 3 of the 5 were the same. And then we each had 2 other ones, which were somewhere in the others' mix of values, but maybe weren't as high priorities. So I think for us, the struggle in values when they clash a little bit comes more from a place of prioritizing values as opposed to the values themselves being kind of in opposition to each other. So for example, like I think my husband's top value, I want to say it's health. I'm pretty sure it's health. So he's a crazy ultramarathon runner, and does all the things. And so one of the ways that I can really help support him is to, in our schedule, make sure that he has time to do things like training for that, because that's really important to him. And on the flip side, my top value is actually inner harmony. So for me, if everything isn't aligned with myself, then I can't be in alignment with everything else in my life, whether that's as a mother, whether that's, in my job, with my husband, my health. Like if I'm not in alignment, everything else suffers, right? And that's a bit of a hard lesson to learn as a working mom. I'm an engineer, my husband's an engineer. We have, very like higher stress jobs that require a lot of focus and work ethic. And so it can be difficult to shift that mindset away from giving to everyone else in order to really focus on my own inner harmony. But the values exercise really helped me realize that I have to prioritize that for myself, or everything else in my life suffers. So for us, it worked out really well, and it helps us kind of balance and support each other as partners better, which I think makes our marriage stronger and our partnership stronger, especially with, small kids, because that is a hard season of life with little kids as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Megan, for sharing that. I've been doing a deeper check-in on my values again right now. It is easy. We talk about not being on autopilot in this program, and that is a work in progress. I've I'm at risk of going on autopilot to like, oh, I've got my values set. Now I'm good. I can cruise. But as Megan mentioned, it's sometimes prioritizing them and really asking yourself, what does this actually mean? There are different ways to define faith. And even if you look at the value of love, which is one of my core values, sometimes as well, love for myself, love for others. Is it self-love? Is it how do you, and then you look at what your faith tells you. So it's a discernment and how you bring that into the workplace. Your personal brand will start with those values. And we know that when you become a mother, a working mother, then either those values can shift, typically family happiness and health start being a little bit higher on your list, or you just realize that the values you've had are even stronger. So I will go to the next question in a second. It's a bit of a harder one. And so I will tell people who I'm going to prompt to answer, because you might just want to gather your thoughts a little bit. I also wanted to go to Patty. You're just at the beginning of the process. So I'll ask you about your values, and then I will say who I'm going to ask to answer the second question if you want to gather your thoughts. The second point in your personal brand is define the impact you want to make in multiple areas of your life, your career, your family, and other areas, and how your skills align with that impact. What do you want to be known for? I said, go back to that 25-year vision. Close your eyes. What is it in your field that you are fixing? In 25 years, how will your children's lives be better because of you? That transcends this job, this season of life. So again, not an easy question at all. But many of you on the call here are problem solvers. Let's say in a profession like engineers, you are trained, your minds are trained to solve problems, right? And if you're at a professional, the higher you go, the bigger the problems you are solving. And often the higher the compensation for the level of problem you are solving. Julia, you mentioned earlier that you had a negative mindset, but if your job is to solve problems, I'm not going to blame you for the fact that that's what your mindset is trained to do. So let me put that in the chat. And I will be asking Teresa to speak up. You and I have talked a lot about your love, I think, for reliability and how it relates to your personal brand. So when I ask you to speak after Patty gives her answer, I would love to hear your journey about personal branding and the impact you want to make in your field. Okay, how has that been like for you and where you are? Kathleen, you and I just recently, we spoke about your impact, and you were saying, oh, it's a little bit hard to think about my career. I know in my personal life, but in my career, it's not that simple because of where I am. So I will ask you to speak up about where you are in the process. And then maybe Julia and Amanda Robertson, I know you've done the, okay. Thank you for letting me know that Kathleen is in listening mode. I appreciate that. Amanda, I know you've done your impact maps, so you might be interested in speaking to this topic. And Julia as well, when you were, you're thinking about your business and the impact you want to make, and even the work you've been doing with your business partner, whatever you can touch upon in that very loaded question I put in the chat that is not easy to answer overnight. And that's a bit of the MoMBA formula to personal branding. It's not a one size fits all. Other personal branding experts might see something slightly different, but I like to bring motherhood and your profession together. So to give people time to think, I think Teresa, Amanda Robertson, and Julia. I'll ask Patty, how has your journey of reflecting on your values been? You are just at the beginning of this program, so you can bring that fresh perspective.
Yes, so I started with the program here at the beginning of July, and I am an engineer, and my mind works that, it has to be done, it has to be precise, it has to be done in the right order, and I don't like to do it twice. So I went through and picked what my values were and asked my husband to do his, and then got more and more frustrated as the weeks went by, and he hadn't done it yet. And I wanted all of it together, mine and his, so that I could submit it all at once. And I was rather frustrated with the fact that he didn't seem to be prioritizing getting it done like I wanted him to. And so we had a discussion and decided that through the support chat with the MoMBA group, that it was better for me to just move forward as opposed to letting that be a roadblock for me. And so I am moving forward with just my values for now. And whenever he catches up, that'll be great. And I'll just do it again. But for now, for myself, it was interesting to sit and focus on what my values are. My upbringing was, I had an alcoholic father, and so there was a lot of, people pleasing and trying to keep the peace and not rock the boat and stuff like that. So I've always, my whole life, been really good at, going along with whatever other people want. And I'm fine with whatever somebody else has a preference on, because I've never really had a strong internal drive behind what has to be done for me, for myself. And so going through and figuring out what my values are just for me, myself, was interesting. And it came out for me that my top value is generosity, which kind of falls in line with what I've done my whole life, which is putting other people first. But I think that knowing that it's a core value for myself now gives it more purpose, as opposed to just that's what I've always done. And then my second core value is wholeheartedness. And so that for me means that I'm, putting my whole effort into the things that are important to me. And that's myself, my family, my friends. I've had a lot of friends that, have brought up things that came into issues for them. And then at the end of our conversation, they'll tell me, thanks for making time to fit me in your busy schedule and help me with this. And I always tell them that it's not that I'm finding the time to fit them in, it's that I'm making the time, because this is the top priority for me to help you with whatever your problem is, as opposed to all the other 18 things on my to-do list. And so knowing that it's a core value for me makes it kind of make more sense. And then for my top 5 are joy, family, and integrity. And so I think when my husband does his eventually, it'll be interesting to see where they line up. And for us as a couple, I think joy is probably going to overlap, because when we were doing our getting ready for our marriage, the vows that traditionally are used in the United Church where we are, you do all of the I promise to love, cherish, whatever. But at the end, it's like, and this is my solemn vow. And my husband actually asked the minister for our service if we could change it to say, and this is my joyous vow, because he didn't want it to be solemn and, sad sounding. He wanted it to be joyous. And so I think joy is one that's going to overlap for us, but it's been an interesting process to just kind of focus on myself for once.
Thank you. This is beautiful. I think I'm a little bit teary-eyed. I saw other faces going like myself. So it's just beautiful to think about how this translates into a personal brand at work. And when we do a roadmap in the MoMBA program, so we do your vision, your values, and then we have this pretty long process document called your roadmap. We have a spot for your personal values, but also the corporate values. And maybe the values that really come to light at work are slightly different with the values that you honor at home. So it's interesting. It will be interesting, Patty, to have that discussion later on with you, as well as how your personal brand shows up in the different spheres of your life, and integrity, because we never want to be in a place where we're completely compromising ourselves, right? And cannot be our values driven self. Thank you for sharing that story. Lovely. Okay, Teresa. So can you share your journey of personal branding, or reflecting and embracing imperfect action and uncertainty in this area of your life, and how your values have been driving that?
Yeah, you bet. So first off, I've got my little sidekick with me today. He's fascinated by the ceiling fan because he's only about 2 months old now. So he's loving that I turned it on and it's moving now. I think the existential crisis when you're 2 months old is, does the ceiling fan still turn? And the answer is yes. But yeah, so we're, I guess we kind of bridging things together. So our top value in our family, and very similar to Amanda, my husband and I did it separately, and then we kind of came together and discussed. And our number one value in our family is our family well-being. So that's been very interesting to kind of have that at the forefront as we've worked through my husband starting a business, and then me going back after mat leave with our first son, and then going on mat leave with our second. So I'm off on mat leave right now. And the work that I do, so I'm an engineer, mechanical engineer by training, and the work that I'm doing is mostly in kind of that reliability and work management space at the moment. So it's been incredibly interesting, as Kenia kind of mentioned. First off, like, moving away from my innate reliability engineer, perfection, kind of like there is a right answer kind of thing. You can do the math and arrive at the best answer or the right answer. kind of hanging some of that up and saying like, okay, well, let's get real here. This is life and kids and family. People have feelings, and moving more towards, embracing that imperfect action, like get something moving, get working on something. Bless you. Because doing something is often better than doing nothing. Once you've got kids around, you don't always have the time to sit down and make something perfect. You kind of need to just take a stab at it. If you've got 10 minutes, and move it forward. If you can take a little time when you're at work, think about something on your commute, have a quick conversation with hubby, and just kind of keep it moving along. That can often make a big difference. Especially when you think about your impact. You don't necessarily have that time to make a big plan for your kids and how they're going to spend their extracurricular time, right? You think about impact you want to make in your family, things you want to teach your kids. You may not have the time to sit down and like map all of that out, but if you can think about something that you want to teach your kids in the next 2 years, in the next 6 months, hey, it'd be really handy if the 3-year-old could help dad make pancakes in the morning, gosh, we would like it if he was, learning about cooking, right? Like that's an impact that we want to have on his life, is that he has a love of cooking, a love of food, much the same way that we do, right? Like picking those little things and then just kind of, today we're going to concentrate on how to crack an egg. Okay, well, that's going to be like a 2-month thing of learning how to crack an egg when you're 3 years old, right? Like you don't learn everything overnight, and not being afraid to make mistakes and try things and move on. And kind of just touching on the career side as well, being able to have that impact at work and tying in some of the things, sometimes people people who weren't involved with raising their children might say something to you as you go off on mat leave, like enjoy your vacation. Such an ignorant thing to say. I definitely found that with having kids, first off, increased my patience exponentially. Right? Yeah. Yeah. And then also, being able to dial into things like some of the mindset work. Right? I know. He's being all smiles. I know you want to tell them. I know it's so different. Just tying into some of that mindset work of like, how can I, right? What Patty was saying about, having it'd be lovely to have a cleaner come in, weekly instead of bi-weekly. And, if it really came down to it, and that was something that was a priority that was going to make or break it with your family, or maybe you think about something with childcare, and how can I, right? Dialing in on that mindset. You're very chatty. Yes, I know. See, he knows this is important stuff. Okay. Mommy's almost done. So yeah, I'll leave it off there with the mindset stuff, and just and actually, funny enough, I've dug at a few guys at work with the how can I, right? When we're trying to bring in some change and they're digging their heels in and saying the whole like, well, we can't possibly. And I'm like, back that train up, buddy. Like, you go back and think about this and you tell me what it would take. What would it take? Just get creative. Do you need 10 more guys? What do you need? You need a contractor full-time for the next month? Tell me, what do you need? We'll make it happen. How can you? So just taking that mindset work that we're doing here and parlaying that into poking the guys at work and making them think too.
Thank you. Thank you so much for bringing your sidekick along and sharing your journey. I know, Teresa, when you and I were tracking the changes, you said that the how can I versus I can't because shift has been huge for you. Ooh, we get to experience the fan too. Awesome. I love it. I'm excited in the background. The how can I? And again, I have to catch myself too, because there are times in life where a brain tends to start these tracks of being like, I can because, but this problem and this, but hey, you didn't hear that part of my problem versus how can I, right? And it's the same thing for the cleaner. I go back to it. I wanted to increase that in my line item budget. Sometimes you have to wait a year to do it. That's fine. But if I don't set the intention and I don't look at the other pieces of my budget and I don't ask myself, how can I, it'll never get done. And yet that's the thing that could save your career or your marriage, right? Brittany mentioned that yesterday in her call. She said, absolutely. We decided that a cleaner is way worth it than an away vacation this year, because that's what we need. And sometimes as the call, we need to make, I know childcare is expensive and I know other things are, but if we're really committed to our professional journey, sometimes we have to make those hard choices. I was going to bring up the MoMBA FAQ today, and I think I will later this weekend. I mean, for those of you who are really serious and interested in the program, there's plenty of information everywhere. And I want to take advantage of the fact that there are so many MoMBA participants on the call, so you can actually hear the thought process. I think that's more valuable than me telling you like, who's this program for and what kind of results you're going to get. You're seeing it on the screen today, right? But you can apply until August 30th, and we have some very cool closed door bonus sessions. We are bringing our personal brand partner next Wednesday for those of you who apply, and it's open to all MoMBA participants. Kristen Dick is going to be talking about personal branding, and then our wealth partner is going to be talking about opportunity cost when investing next week. So those are the bonus sessions that are coming up, and more case studies. So I'm shifting the programming to really focus on the conversations that you have, the examples, real life examples of people building impact map and personal brand statements. I think that will be more useful to give you concrete examples. So Amanda Robertson, I will jump to you and then to Julia. You've done that impact map in detail, and to me, that's a deep personal branding tool. What do I mean by impact map? It's maybe 7-8 page document. We put you at the center of it. And it's like every day you're given, let's say, 100 coins of energy. And once you expend them, you can get them back. And on every single day, your actions are making an impact on your family, on your community, on your employer, right? I mapped 7 on the environment. I know that the environment is a very big topic for many of you, but you have to choose in different seasons of life where your impact will be the most important. And Amanda Robertson, what I would like to discuss with you, I don't know why I'm saying your last name because I thought there was another Amanda and I don't want to confuse you with someone else, is you were reflecting on your profession as an engineer and you were wondering at different stages, like, is this the best use of my talents? Should I be doing something else? So ultimately you came to the conclusion that ... over to you.
Yeah, I guess like a little bit on that, like I'm a very passionate type person. Like I'm not one of those people who came to engineering and was like, oh, this is exactly what I was made to do. I have like a whole bunch of different hobbies. I'm a very creative person, so sometimes I don't really fit strictly into like the traditional engineering box per se. So there was a lot of time, even in university, where I would struggle with, should I be here? Maybe I should quit and go into medicine. I love healthcare stuff and I love biology and I love all these other random things. And so yeah, with the impact map, it was really interesting to see all the different areas that you can have impact in. And for me, I'm a very visual person. And so the realization that Kenny was alluding to was that the biggest impact I realized that I could have was with the skills that I already had spent. You know, I'm already 13 years into my career at this point. And it's not to say that I'm just going to impact engineering because I've spent all this time. It's that I also still do love it. It is an impact that I want to have. So since around 2016, I ended up getting into a role in solar design. And since then, my role has kind of shifted a little bit more away from the technical contributor into like interconnections and project management and that type of thing. But I think that this impact map is so helpful to define where you can actually drive things to make a bigger vision. So like, I think initially when I did my 25-year vision, it was easier to see things like time I spent with my husband and time I spent with my kids. Like those things were quite easy to imagine. And I had a really hard time imagining my career side actually. But the tools kind of helped me dive into like what I value in terms of changing the world. And that's always been something that's been part of me. And in university, I was part of Engineers Without Borders. I was part of like social justice groups. and a number of different things like that. And so some of those things, like with poverty, it's a very diverse problem that touches many aspects of life. And so you can see where it's very easy for me to get unfocused because there's just so many things to do to solve these problems. But this impact map really helped me focus in and say, okay, this is where I can make the most impact, and this is where I can effectively make the most change. And so having that it's just been so reassuring. Like, I don't feel as lost as I did before. I feel a lot more focused. I feel a lot more confident that the actions and the time that I'm spending away from my family, all the sacrifices that we make for our careers, is going towards something that really matters and matters to my children's generation and beyond as well. So, yeah.
Thank you, Amanda. To make this session relevant for everybody who's on the call today, focusing that it overlaps with the MoMBA call, all the questions that we're exploring today, I would encourage you to make time to discuss them with your partner. If you're at that point where, if you're just starting out in the program, which a few on the screen are, you literally a few weeks in the reflection, values and vision, and then Amanda gave some great tips about making it conversational. Like, you keep on coming back to that anytime we talk about conversation with partner, not making it a solemn discussion, but a joyful one where you bring it up casually has been successful for you, right? And when my husband came to talk about his experience, and first when I brought up values with him a few years ago, he's much more polite on the surface, but he gave me insights and gave us insight as to what he was going back to in the back of his mind, which really made me laugh. I say, like, don't worry, you can just be super honest here. And he said, all right, when Kenya came to me with that, I thought she took a book and she wanted to do an 8+ assignment. And, I'm like, okay, Kenya, show it to me. You just want to do good on this exercise. And I couldn't help but laugh at myself, because most of you, if you're on this call, you were probably an A+ student. And so he said that what really worked for him in the end was the analogy of sports. A lot of guys like watching sports. And he said, we're a team. I don't want Kenya to just be driving the car of our lives. I want to be on the, in the driver's seat and the passenger seat doing it together. So ultimately, that's when he started taking the values exercise more seriously. He thought, oh, wait a second, this really matters. This actually defines our day to day. So that's another example of how you can bring your partner along. So yes, I absolutely. You know what, Anastasia, you're sending me a message. Would you like to jump on and talk about the application of values with your husband? Go ahead.
Sure, I can do that. So I am in the same place as Amanda and Patty for a while. My husband kind of ignored this. I did values work. He sort of said, yeah, later. It took years. He's finally done it. But I just messaged Kenya to say, I had a conversation with my husband this morning about where our values sit in planning our 5-year-old's birthday party next month. And he is the one who brought it up. He was talking about values in terms of like, okay, so we agree on first principles. Our primary value here is that we want her to have the party that she wants. Yes? Okay. Now, how are our own values like coming into it? So I will say, like, it comes. I mean, my husband's kind of weird, so maybe not for everyone, but like, once you've done the work, it shows up in all kinds of places. About, do we invite the whole class to daycare? Well, how does that fit with value from daycare? So how does that fit with values? So that was my morning.
Absolutely. Once you uncover your values, you can't go back. And it shows up everywhere. Thank you. Thank you for that example. And it can also help you redefine how you live success in your life. Maybe up until now, you were living it through the lens of your parents, through your employer, through your church, which has a lot of value, but sometimes we need more discernment. Like, what is really me? What is my true calling? What do I keep? Patty, you made a really interesting point about the generosity. There's a value that we've maybe internalized because of external circumstances. And then there's deciding, do I want to change my identity? Am I becoming somebody else? Or what am I keeping? What am I leaving behind? Is it valid still to me because it was kind of reactive to a situation in my life? Or does it make the essence of who I am? Very deep philosophical questions, this value stuff. We package it into a values game in the MoMBA program. There's a formula to do it. You can Google values assessment. If you don't end up joining the MoMBA program, you can, still do this work. I forgot to ask you a question, Julia, about actually implementation on the day-to-day, and then we'll go to your impact. How is it different to actually do work like that alone versus doing it in a community of other parents who are having the reflections and the challenges at the same time, and dosing it like week after week and year after year? And then we'll go into your impact.
Yeah, I think it's important when I know for me it was always, well, what should they be, right? Like I kind of have a feeling of what they are, and what should they be, that or should they be something else, right? And I remember you challenged me on that, and like, no, they are what they are. Like, don't worry about the should piece. But having part of that, being part of that community, really kind of helped reflect, kind of how, well, I guess how I compared. I don't want to say that I'm comparing, but how does that, how is my journey in developing my values? How does that align with others? How, what are the challenges others are having? And so I found that to be quite helpful in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. And dosing it over time versus trying to do it all in one fell swoop, but actually taking a bit of time every week to make it a practice of doing this mindset work.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I don't think I could have, because I put up all the values and I just stared at the wall. And I'm like, well, I can't actually make a decision right now. Like, this is just, I need time to think about this, and I need time to kind of absorb it. Well, what does it mean? So this is what the word is. How am I defining it? And that was one thing actually when my husband did it, I look at, and we did this, probably almost a year and a half ago now, and I look at what we overlapped with, and then I see some things that he does. I'm like, how are we defining these things? Because that's not how, that behavior or that whatever that was, that doesn't align with this value. So is it, we're defining them differently, or are you not, this is not, whatever happened, does this not align with your values? So it's a really complex exercise, or it certainly can be when you start to look at a lot of these details. So it's, that ongoing reflection, I think, is really important.
Yeah, it's not a one and done deal, although it's really helpful to have it on a board and then to reflect on it as often as possible. So let's wrap up our impact part, and then I will paste the last pieces of personal branding and the steps to design your personal brand as a mom in the chat. Julia, talk to us about your impact. You started off doing the work of being the CEO of your life on the home front, and then you decided that it was time for you to take a leap into entrepreneurship. And so you've had to think about the impact you want to make as an engineer, as an entrepreneur, as a mother, and project into the future. And you texted me the other day, I'm so fired up. I have my plan for the next 10 years. I know where I'm going. I have purpose. So let's talk about the impact you want to make through your work.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And it's funny because I feel like I really am in a period of transition. I look at the work that I used to do, which was very, regulatory based and really trying to find solutions for companies. And now the work that I'm kind of, transferring into is more, building soft skills in people. So it's the, one side of the spectrum, but it's been such an interesting journey because, like I mentioned to you, we've done so much brainstorming and how we can deliver this program to people that, our vision is to ultimately help them be able to communicate better with each other, really understand who they are, what makes them tick, but ultimately being able to put them in situations where they can always be successful because they know who they are and they know who they're talking to. And so they can deliver those messages in a way that just resonates. Right. And there's so many brilliant people out there, but if they cannot get their ideas across, it just doesn't connect. And so, so I look at that and I look at how that impacts my 25-year vision, which I created about a year and a half ago. And, it's interesting. I'm starting to feel differently about the impact that I guess not feel differently about the impact that I want to have like on my children and the role model that I want to play for them. But I see this work really feeding into that. And so, yes, we're my husband's an engineer as well. We're very technical people, and we can solve problems, and we can ignore emotions, to the like champs, right? And because we both grew up in those kinds of environments where emotions are just something that's in the way. And I don't want my kids to grow up in that, right? I'm having to unlearn all of this stuff. And I want them to just start off with something better. It's like, you know what? You can be technical and you can be emotionally intelligent. Those things can go together, right? And so making sure that that's a big part of their experience as children will just help them succeed in life. And so that's where I really see, the benefit in what I'm doing as an entrepreneur is no one would hire me to develop these programs now as an engineer with my experience base, but as an entrepreneur, I can work with people that do have that knowledge base and really propel them and us forward so that we can actually make a better impact in the world, and in turn, that's going to benefit my children. Like, it's just, I got goosebumps. I'm sorry. This is, it's exciting. It's an exciting time.
Thank you for sharing that, Julia. For those who are watching the recording, only see the speaker when Julia said, we're trained to treat emotions as something that's in the way. Everybody who's on camera is kind of chuckling, probably relating in some way. I'm probably an outlier. I'm trying to see everybody on the call today, everybody I know. I was trained as a musician, as a journalist, as a communications professional. What else? I did a master's in European studies, so I'm probably the only non-STEM professional, and we market this program a lot to STEM professionals. Oh, Anastasia is an academic, right? So, but there's still like scientific method in the academic world. I say STEM and STEAM professionals, and I think magical things can come together when you put that logical side of things with the arts and the humanities and academia, because at the end of the day, what are we doing here? We are asking you the question, why? Why are you doing what you're doing as a mother, as an engineer, as a professional, as an academic? What's the deeper reason? And that's what us humanities, arts, journalists, people bring to the table, is asking the deeper why question. You can't just go through life solving a mathematical problem in a vacuum if there's no deeper purpose to it and how it's impacting humans. And humans have emotions. And most of our emotions, no matter our decisions, no matter how logical and rational they are, they have an emotional trigger to them. I encourage you this week to observe your different decisions, even if you're being really, really rational. You're thinking, we need to buy this house, and it makes sense from a logical perspective, and the math makes sense. And the last impulse will be emotional, like, I really love it, right? It's just that last little trigger. And so, Julia, that was really fun for you to bring up that how the technical and emotional intelligence can come together. I chuckle, and especially when I think about also the men engineers in my life and the interactions and the practicalities. You made me think about them in a funny way. So, all right, the last part of the personal brand here, I'm putting them in the chat, is what are the big problems you want to solve so that your children can inherit a better future? And the second part of that question is critical for you as a caregiver, because you are hired at work to solve problems and to provide value by solving problems. So if you're thinking about your next performance review, asking for a raise, your next position, enter the discussion from that perspective. What problems am I solving, and how much value am I providing? And what is the dollar sign? It can be uncomfortable to ask that question. One senior woman who has worked with us, she says her boss is always saying, what's the dollar value of this activity? What's the dollar value of this activity? And I know life is not just about profit, but if you have a job and you're earning a paycheck, it's because you are providing value that has a dollar value at the end of the day. So when you want to add the parenting side of things, it can be so motivating, as Julia said, to think, how am I building a better future for my children through my work? Right? Thanks, Amanda. If you don't feel that sense of connection and purpose in your career, and you go to work day in, day out to simply collect a paycheck, but you don't think that it's helping build a better world for your children, I think most of us here start feeling a tension. We need to feel that sense of purpose and connection. That's the 25-year vision through the lens of what your children will say about you. And then there's a line that says, to make more money, solve bigger problems. You may find that important or not important. Some of you don't care about making more money in your work, which is fine. I still keep on stressing that if as mothers, we want to change the world, we need financial resources. So please don't ignore the money equation completely. How can we build a world that works better for us if we don't take charge, if we don't become leaders? I see so many posts on LinkedIn that say, employers, do that to retain your employees. But how many posts do I see? Moms, start businesses so you can build the world in your image versus, I think there's only so far we can go by trying to change the system from within. I think we need to reinvent the system. That at least is my vision. And it's one mindset, one value set, one mother at a time, is be those leaders that you want the world to be led by. And that starts with your values and your vision. Okay. So brilliant, Anastasia. I'm solving some equity issues in social sciences so that policies and practices, her whole life will be informed by the research questions lots of different people think are important. And I'm training students to ask better questions. Yes, that impact is so important. I wanted to say one last thing, and I think I forgot it. Are there any questions from people like from people like Jacqueline, Andrea Marcialis, Andrea Butlin, Kurat? I hope I'm saying your name right. Andrea, yeah, I said Andrea Butlin and Andrea Marcialis, Alka, even I think Soraya, you said you were in listening mode, but this is the time. Marianne, do you have any questions about any of the materials today or about the MoMBA program? So I am seeing a personal message here, so I will copy that. I'll message you privately. Just a second, let me note it before it disappears. Okay, so if there are no questions, and Kurat, you raised your hand. Please tell me if I said your name correctly first. So go ahead.
Hi. Yeah,
Hi.
you said it right. Yeah, it's Kuratul N, one word. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so nice to talk to you, like listen to you guys. I was wondering, like, how do you guys, like, one of you mentioned that their partner were not participating into the value exercise, like while you're writing. How do you like mentally tell yourself that it is a roadblock and you have to, go without it? It's the most hardest part for me. I'm just stuck there. So if there is any tip that can push me beyond that, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. So I'm seeing Megan nodding. I know Patty, you went through this roadblock recently. I don't know if I can ask both you and Megan to speak.
Sure, yeah. So like I said, my husband hasn't done his values yet, and I've decided I'm just going to move forward with what I have. And part of that was just getting myself to the mindset that what these ladies that have been in the program longer than I have mentioned was, embracing the imperfect action, which is something I had never heard before joining this group. And I think it was a good way for me to picture it in my head, was that although it's not perfect because it doesn't have mine and my husband's together, which is what I want, it's still moving forward. And so I think that imperfect action being better than no action, which is where I was at with the roadblock of waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, because I can't make him decide what his values are. I have to just let him do that on his own time frame. But I can still, even without that information, move forward with looking at where I envision our 25-year future. And yes, it means that whenever he decides to get on board, I'm probably going to have to do it again. And I don't like doing things twice, but it's still a little bit right now with my perspective is better than nothing. And I don't want to be 2 months behind because I've waited for him before I took that next step. And so myself going through the CEO module, I had moved past the parts where you're supposed to fill in the form and send it in and all that. I just kind of left that unchecked and moved on to the next one, and still went and listened to the podcast that was recommended in week 3 or 4, or wherever it was at, and read the articles and kept working my way through all of that. And then I kind of got to the end of the CEO module and was like, okay, but I still have these things that are outstanding that I haven't done yet. And so that was when because I'm part of the group, we have a WhatsApp chat, and I put a post in there and said, ladies, how do you get your husbands to cooperate? And that's basically what they said was, you just start without them. They'll figure it out. So that's how I did it. And he hasn't figured it out yet, but I'm thinking that he will eventually.
So before Megan gives her answer, a lot is there's a few things that I would like to say. One, there's a book that I was reading recently about building a legacy for generations to come, and it asks who should carry this work in a family. The person who is most inspired to do it. So I was like, all right, we all have a similar problem in this group. We all feel quite inspired to do this work for a family. So let's move forward. My husband, he saw what a huge impact it had on me to be clear on my values and vision. And so the best way to get people to collaborate, or one of the best ways, is if they see the positive impact in your life and then they decide, I want that too, right? Action speaks louder than words. So what we often say is start the work, have faith that this work takes time, have a process, and live your values, and then, show it in a kind way. And that will typically open the door over time to do it. It's not always that simple, but that can be the first step. Most of us do this work independently before our husbands notice and want to come along for the journey. So you give us a thumbs up. Megan, what did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I prescribe to the philosophy of lead by example. So I think while it would be in a perfect world wonderful to walk this exact journey with your partner hand in hand, it's just not the reality of the situation, and that's okay. I'm like a personal development junkie, so I love doing this kind of stuff. My husband not so much. So he did do the values exercise with me, I will say, but a lot of my other success in getting him to kind of come along, not that he's been opposed to it at any point, but just he doesn't want to sit down and think these deep thoughts and ponder these really philosophical words today, questions, these big questions that can be hard to answer, because it means facing difficult parts of yourself. It means taking responsibility for yourself. There's, holding yourself accountable for things. Ultimately, you can control yourself. You can't control other people around you. You can't control their reactions. So what can you do? You can lead by example. And for some of the more tangible things that have come out of this work, he has benefited from it. And I think by having those perks sort of, and the positives come out of this work that I'm doing, he starts to come along too. And sprinkling it into more casual conversations when we're just like, oh, what do you think about this? Or I'd really like to spend more time doing that. What are your thoughts about this? And doing it in a very casual, non-committal way seems to have a lot more success than trying to get him to sit down and be like, okay, we need to sit down for an hour and do this 5-page worksheet together. That's just not really feasible or it's just not realistic for most of our partners. Maybe one day, but you will notice that those of us I'm in my 3rd year of the program, those of us who've been doing this work for years, our partners are just now, years later, starting to be like, oh, okay, let's see where this goes. Maybe I'll do a little bit of it too. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's going to take time, but you can lead by example in the meantime, and it will still benefit you and it will still benefit your family, even if your husband's not doing everything with you.
I love that. Easier said than done. I won't lie, the leading by example thing, sometimes it's hindsight. I look back and oh yes, those are my values and my vision. This is how I should have acted. Let's learn from the mistake and have some humility. I wanted to address 2 comments that were in the chat. So Sarai said, thank you for the thoughts. Feel free to send me a voice memo. You and I will have our first one-on-one soon. So that will definitely help with giving you direction, because Megan will probably nod and anyone else. The beginning of the program can feel a bit like a fire hose. So I want to give you the guidance and break it down into very actionable step-by-step pieces. For the person who said they're having an issue joining the Facebook group, when I checked this morning, there were no pending names. So what I will do is I will check your name on our database and send you a text message or an email to see if we can help you, because I didn't see anything this morning. Liba, if you could check again. I will also tell you after our call. And finally, if you're wondering, is the MoMBA program for me? Well, if you've been attending a lot of our sessions and you're finding them interesting, that's a good sign that this community might benefit you. And when we do the MoMBA program, it's a weekly call, not one every single day. If you are thinking that becoming a mother now or in the future, because there are also employers asking me, can I sign up people who are not moms yet? We want to help prepare people, and they are opening up it. Yes, it can be. I mean, the earlier you start thinking about your values and your vision, I'm seeing a smile here. Brett's smile on the screen. Yes, if you've been attending a lot of these sessions and found them valuable, they will help you grow your leadership skills, whether you want to be promoted or not, to have more confidence in what you're building, to know what you want in life, to feel supported, to make mindset work a habit, to get the accountability. I've tried doing some of my progress work on my own. I realize whenever I'm in a group and whenever I have somebody guiding me, I get to where I want to go much faster. If you want to hear from at least more than 50 experts on the topics of mother success and leadership, this is the place. If it's time for a change, if it's the time for growth, if it's the time for community, if you're a mom, if you're highly educated, if your career identity is important to you, then you can book a time and talk to me. And I'm so pleased that over the years, more and more employers are contributing to the tuition. And even if you have to pay out of pocket, which some people do, that also gives you amazing results because you really make this work a priority. When you're putting that money in that work, let me tell you, you're going to do those values and that vision. You're not going to put it off as much as you did. So we will continue with some bonus sessions until next Wednesday. Thank you so much for so many MoMBA participants showed up today. I really appreciate your time. I think we brought up some really, really deep questions that you can remind yourself of and you can say, yes, it's time for me to revisit them. And yes, and just stay tuned for future sessions and recordings. Tomorrow's with Amanda Robertson. We're really talking about what senior leaders are missing out on from working moms. On Saturday, I'll be doing a bonus session on the areas of your life you absolutely must figure out if you're a mom with a career. On Sunday, we'll stream a bonus session about wealth that will be available for a limited time. And then Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and even Thursday, there's going to be a lot of like new bonus materials, case studies, testimonials. It'll all be available in the Facebook group until Wednesday, except for the closed door bonus sessions. That's only if you apply for the program that you will get access to those special guest speakers. And Liba can put, please, if you could put the application link in the chat. They're also in your workbooks. So thank you so much for a wonderful session today, for the turnout. Thank you, Julia, for your testimonial, and everybody else who shared. And I will see hopefully many of you tomorrow on tomorrow's session. Bye. Take care.